Joining us right now to talk about the markets here on Real Ag Radio is Chuck Penner of Leftfield Commodity Research, based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Chuck, how are we doing?
It's a bright sunny day. We're just enjoying the warm weather and watching the crops starting to pop.
Yeah, and this is always a tough time of the year when you're trying to sort out, figure out, market direction, what you should do, shouldn't do from a risk management perspective. Uh, the weather is having an impact on the growing season, of course, in Canada and the US. But I guess what at this time of the year, what is normal seasonal behavior of the markets?
Down. The short
Oh
answer is
man,
down.
no.
That was an easy, that was a softball. Anyway, yeah, that's what markets do. Even in 2021, when we had the huge drought, prices were heading lower even through the spring. Now they hit their seasonal lows earlier that year, but they still were declining at this time of year until I'm going to say into July, and then that's when they started to turn around. But this isn't 2021 this year. Yeah, there are problems in various spots, and that's inevitable. But this is far from a 2021 situation, and so it's going to follow those seasonals. The difficulty is figuring out how much of these declines that we're seeing in canola and wheat and bunch of crops, how much of those declines are just the normal seasonal type of behavior, and how much of it is bigger stuff going on, and that varies depending on crop. And then there are some that are actually, like some of the minor crops, that are actually not following the seasonals lower. There's a couple of those, and so you wonder whether there's a bigger story there for these minor crops. Things like flax or canary seed or things like that. They're not going lower right now, so you wonder what's making that happen.
Yeah, what do they know that some of the majors don't know, or maybe they're just slow to catch on to what's really happening?
That could be
There's
too.
there is two ways to look at it. We have seen definitely declines in the majors, corn, soybeans, wheat, and canola, of course. Do you see a lot of downside risk from here, or like if you look at like November canola, just an example? Obviously, we're trying to get into flirt with that 600.
Yep.
Is there downside risk below it at this point, or is this kind of a wait and see situation for harvest?
Well, I hate to say it, but the seasonals for canola usually bottom out in mid-August to
Hmm.
mid-September.
So we got time then.
So we got a little bit of natural downward momentum, if you want to call it that, for the next number of weeks yet. So there is certainly some risk from that. Some of the things that are going on in the broader market could point to some recovery, but it may not happen until we actually get past harvest. Well, and of course that's when the seasonals start to go higher as well too. But things like a smaller Ukrainian crop, a smaller Australian crop, smaller European crop, those are all positives. But right now the market isn't trading those, and they're looking at, one of the things they're looking at is the Canadian crop, which, yeah, there are a few trouble spots, but on the whole, it's looking pretty good, better than it has for a few years, and so that's certainly weighing on things too. We'll get the acreage estimates from StatsCan tomorrow. Don't expect to see a big change for canola. It's going to be the yield that'll be the real variable for that size of the market. There is one thing that in the canola, if someone really wants to, cross their fingers and hold out hope, would be that the U.S. does something about this fake cooking oil, used cooking oil coming in.
UCO.
Yeah, coming into the U.S. If they were to shut off the tap on that, I mean, it would drive a whole lot more demand for Canadian canola seed to go down to U.S. crushers, and then also would keep our crushers running at full capacity. I mean, they're pretty much running full tilt anyway, so we can't add a whole lot more demand right there. But that would be a positive thing for soy oil and for canola oil and canola by extension.
And you look at the Western Canadian crop, and there are some trouble spots. So I don't want to broad brush it, like as you mentioned, but overall, we're in a lot better moisture situation. Of course, you look at the moisture map for Manitoba and Saskatchewan; it is epically better than it was at this time last year. a lot of growers waiting for the temperature to turn up. But even on a cereal crop, these have been ideal temperatures for cereals. Like it is lining up here for, things are kind of going. If you're like rooting for higher yields, things are lining up in a very nice order for you. Some growers have mentioned repeatedly, based on the lateness of some of the seeding and the fact that we haven't had much temperature, they're already starting to talk about, frost risk for the fall. But well, probably need to slow down a little bit from that aspect. Who knows what is in store for us, and that would
Yeah,
be
and
a
the
big
market.
gamble, big
Yeah,
gambling on an early frost.
and traders are certainly not going to be trading on that until it actually happens. Like, again, you get into mid-September, and even then, if you have an open fall, whatever, but they're not going to trade it until the canola crop, the late canola is dead. I mean, think about canola. Does it like hot temperatures? Does it like cool temperatures? I'm going to say cool, right? For
Yeah.
for flowering and setting seed and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's there, but I don't expect to see, on the thought that it might get frosted in fall. Nobody's going to trade that yet. And so that's what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the StatsCan report for Western Canada. There's StatsCan, and then there's also USDA acreage this week as well. Just let's hit on both of those geographies, and what are the things to look out for as we get the next estimates?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And more so, I mean, there's the corn and the bean numbers from the USDA and those kind of things. The general tendency is to think that both of those acreage will go up, slightly, not huge changes, but there could always be surprises. I mean, these people like myself make these guesstimates of these numbers and things like that, and invariably there is a surprise, but I think it might be, yeah. I don't expect to see a huge amount, but that can always be the case. What I always look for in these is, because that's more my interest, are some of the smaller crops. And so you get, things like mustard acreage in Canada and the US. The US is a bigger player now in mustard production. Durum, oats, some of those that don't get much coverage or things like that. I was looking at some Reuters estimates of the Canadian again, the analysts and traders number ideas and things like that. And there's a huge range for a lot of these. So somebody is going to be surprised one way or the other. But for the most part, yeah, we could see a pretty strong reaction on Friday from the USDA report. The StatsCan numbers probably aren't going to move the market, I would say, because again, we're looking at probably pretty small changes in canola. The one thing that it won't catch is, because of the seeding delays, changes to, let's say, if people threw in some more barley late, or things like that, or what did they take out if they were delayed, or things like that. Wouldn't take into account the bigger sloughs that are out there that eat into acres, or those kind of things. Those kind of things won't get captured.
So for growers and trying to establish what their plan is, some people have a plan that, hey, I'm going to wait till harvest and see what I have on this 24 crop from a production standpoint. There's others that are, take a different approach and try to do some pre-selling, pre-contracting, using futures or options or delivery, pre-delivery. Um, what should be things that you should be asking yourself or going through your head as you try to build your best marketing plan here at this point, at the the midway point, or getting, well, I guess the end of June already, man alive.
Yeah, it is. When you look at those kind of things, if you're in an area where, and again, a good chunk of Western Canada is looking at some pretty good conditions. And so we're getting into flowering on canola, we're getting to flag leaf on cereals, or even heading on a few cereals. So we're getting to that stage where there's not much that's going to hammer that crop yields. You could lose a little bit late, and again, this frost issue. But those crops are, I'm not going to call them made, but as you see your bins getting fuller than they have been the last couple of years, or those kind of things, you're going to be less and less sold. So if you had sold, 30%, or pre-sold 30% or something like that, now maybe it's 20%. And so you're realizing that you've got more get caught up on, or those kind of things. But again, not to get panicked by the seasonal declines. I think what we'll have to do is one of the words that I would um, use is patience. I mean, with guys who have old crop still left to sell, that's a hard spot to be in, and that sort of thing. But especially for new crop, I'm going to say be patient. Wait for these markets to do their normal seasonal recovery after harvest. This is just the worst time to sell a crop, and some of that um, panicky kind of selling late in the season is what drives the market even lower.
Yeah.
So if we can remain patient to get through those and then start to see the demand push those markets higher, and some of these I think will get oversold, like canola, wheat. I think is getting oversold. So again, it's waiting for that market to rally. I mean, if you want to sell some cash, buy some calls or something like that,
Yep.
fine. That's not arguing with that kind of strategy, but in overall, for people who are just selling cash, just be patient.
Well, and since we are at the end of June, next week is a weird week, right? Because we got July 1st, Canada Day, we got July 4th. Could be a bit of a weird light trade day, which definitely your week, which can also move the markets in different directions when we're a little bit later on the liquidity on an intraday basis. And of course, in Canada, a lot of people looking to what this, both railways, if this strike actually does happen, and the impact of that on grain movement as we flip over to a new crop marketing year.
Yeah, for some reason, just I don't know if it's coincidence, but they seem to have waited until we're approaching harvest to start to get serious about striking, and my gut reaction is that yeah, it could disrupt things. I would think it wouldn't last long before the government would order them back to work or to arbitration or whatever. I don't think that'll last long. So cross your fingers. If it does happen, it'll just be maybe a week or something like that,
Yeah.
and then we're back in business.
Yeah, if I'm
But it
farming
does
really,
it does cause everything to back up. Yeah.
yeah, if I'm farming really close to the border, I'm maybe thinking about should I just as a hedge or risk mitigation, haul some grain across the border and ship out through the BN and the PNW. Just
Yeah.
that works for some, obviously not for all. Hey Chuck, really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work at Leftfield Commodity Research.
Thanks, Sean.